If you clicked on this episode, I'm guessing you've been feeling like you're falling behind, like you're failing at life, like everybody else has it figured out and you don't. If that's how you're feeling, then this episode is for you. Maybe your career isn't quite where you hoped it would be by now, or maybe your friends are going off and getting married and having kids and in thriving relationships, and you just have this sinking feeling like you've missed your chance. Here's the truth, you're not behind, and we're going to talk about this in today's episode. How to let go of the pressure, the expectations, how to trust the timing of your life and find peace in where you are right now. So take a deep breath, get comfy, get a hot cup of tea, get whatever you need for this episode, and let's dive in. Welcome back to the Anxiously Capable podcast. This is a podcast for anyone struggling with their mental health, anxiety, or OCD, or just the general struggles that we all go through in life. So whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, or any other age bracket, it's really common to feel like you're behind in life, like you're not quite keeping up with the people around you, the other people in your age group, your peers. I'm sure you've gathered from the introduction of this episode that we're going to be talking about feeling behind in life and what that's like and the very real anxiety that that can create for us. We all have moments where we feel like we're not where we should be. And if you're listening to this episode as opposed to watching it, just know that I'm saying should with quotation marks because there is no right path to life. But we all have those moments, those times where we feel like we should be on a different path, or our career should be better, or we should be in a relationship, we should be settled down with children. So, whether it's your career, your personal goals, your relationship, or your finances, or just that general feeling of being stuck while everybody else is moving forward, it is really normal and really common to feel behind at times in life. And I know this feeling personally because I experienced this at multiple different times in life. So I'm going to share a few of these with you just to sort of normalize this experience, because when we feel like this, we can feel really alone, like we're the only person who's not meeting expectations, not keeping up, the only person who's falling behind. And that's not true. We all go through this at some point in life. And at the end of the episode, some listeners have submitted their own situations, their own struggles, their own scenarios where they feel like they're falling behind. And we're going to talk about those as well. So we're going to get to those at the end of the episode. So stay tuned. And as always, with this podcast, a little disclaimer before we get into the episode. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as therapeutic advice or as a replacement for mental health support and mental health care. If you feel you need further support, please reach out to a mental health provider. I always include a couple of links in the description of these episodes on where you can find therapists or where you can find further support. So when I think of falling behind in life, there are two moments that really stand out to me. Two moments where I felt this the most and felt so different to everybody around me and all of my peers. One of these was when I was 18 and I was seeing friends go off to uni, and I was stuck at home struggling with anxiety and depression, because the plot twist, therapists do also struggle with their own mental health, and that needs to be a conversation that's had more. I was stuck at home, honestly, unable to leave the house at times because of anxiety and depression, dropped out of A levels, signed off work because of my mental health. And all around me, everybody else that was my age, that I went to school with, that I knew, was posting on Facebook and Instagram and doing announcements of the university they got into and the course that they were hoping to do. And I remember feeling so far behind. I didn't even have any A levels. The biggest qualification I had to my name was a GCSE at that point, and all of these people had passed their A levels and were going off to do what they wanted to do. And I remember it feeling absolutely awful and really didn't help with the anxiety and depression that I was already feeling, because it kind of encouraged it a little bit more. That feeling of being different to everybody around me and that feeling of not fitting in, being behind. It really sparked all of that for me. So that's one situation that really brought that feeling up for me. And another one was when I was 20, I moved back home. I was going through a difficult time, and I don't talk about this too much. That's kind of a little bit of a boundary I personally have on my socials and my podcast. But basically, at the age of 20, I had to move back home. And I've been living out of home since I was 18. I moved out at 18. And coming back home, that was okay. Like the idea of that was fine. What wasn't to me at the time was coming back home and seeing everybody else post about moving out, moving into their first rental property, buying their first house, settling down with their partner. And it just made me feel so alone and made me feel like I've fallen so far behind because I'd gone from having that. I'd gone from living out of home in a rental property, feeling quite stable, to all of a sudden having to move back home, life thrown upside down, basically back to the point I was at 18. And it was really tough, really, really tough. And that feeling really crept in then. And seeing everybody's posts, seeing everybody buying their house, moving out, all of those sort of things really compounded that. So it was a very similar situation to what I went through at 18. And the key sort of similarity here that you might be noticing is social media. Social media was a huge part of this, and we're going to talk about that because it does play a massive role in this feeling. It plays a huge role in a lot of this sense of being behind in life. So we are going to get onto that later and basically how to cope with it, how to stop it taking such a big toll on us. But yeah, that's just a couple of my personal experiences with this feeling. I know how hard it is. I really do. And if you're feeling this at the moment, I get it. I truly, truly get it. But if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that behind and feeling behind in life, feeling like you can't keep up with those around you, is just a story that society tells us and we believe. It's not a story that we necessarily tell ourselves because it comes from external factors. It's something that is compounded into us. You should be at this stage. You should be doing this by this point in life. So, this is a story that society tells us, and we start to believe it. But it's very rarely true. So, with that, let's talk about why we feel behind in life. We grow up feeling like there is a right and wrong way to live life. We grow up hearing and being told that there's a right way and a wrong way to do life. You have to graduate by this age, you have to have this many kids by this time in life. You have to have a thriving career and be earning this amount of money by this age. But, like, who made these rules and why do we believe that they apply to everyone? It's so easy to feel behind. We feel such a pressure to fit in with other people's timelines when maybe that's not the right timeline for us. And this is really compounded by social media. And I have a love hate relationship with social media personally. I don't actually have personal Instagram accounts. So I do have an iffy relationship with social media. So please note that a little bit of this might come from that biased standpoint of I'm a little bit unsure about it personally. But social media in general is a highlight reel. And I think we can all agree with this. Whether you love or whether you hate social media, it is a highlight reel. People only show their best times, their best moments, the happy parts of their life, the most Instagram worthy parts of their existence. And it's so easy to feel behind when this is what we see, when we see people's highlight reels. If you see someone getting their dream career and they're posting about it, that is going to make you feel like shit. That is going to make you feel like you're behind because they've achieved it. And if there's someone that you went to school with or there's someone that you know personally, that's going to really, really hit hard because if they can do it, why can't you do it? And it's that feeling that social media and the highlight reel gives us. That feeling of, well, if they can do it and they have it, why can't I? And if I don't have it, that must mean that I'm behind. That must mean that I'm not good enough. That must mean that I'm doing something wrong. That must mean that I'm not meeting expectations. And with social media, this happens again and again and again because all we see are people's highlights. All we see are the good moments that people have. Nobody posts about the moments where they doubt themselves, where they feel like a failure, or where they feel not good enough. Nobody posts about the moments where they have to start over, where they have to move home, where they have to move back to their hometown, where they have to take a step down on the career ladder, where they have to take a step back from life. Nobody posts about those moments. Nobody posts about when they suddenly get hit with mental health struggles, or when depression creeps back in again, or when they're too anxious to leave the house. People don't share this. And what that does, it leaves us comparing our lives, our very real, human, messy, complicated lives, because that's what life is like, to somebody's highlight reel. And the things that we are missing are their struggles. We will see them go to the gym. We will see them go on all these big holidays. We will see the cars that they buy, the fancy cars, but we won't see the struggles that they have. We won't see the potential debt that they have because of those expenses. We won't see the impact that that has on their mental health. We won't see that that's maybe the first holiday they've been on in 10 years. We won't see the fact that they've saved for that and scrimped every penny and worked overtime and really struggled to achieve that. If you follow me on Instagram, if you don't, it's at Therapy with Jess Eden, and I highly recommend that you do because we have such fun over there and we post so many things about mental health. But if you do follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I try and limit this. I try not to be a constant highlight reel. I try to post a more honest look at life, life's ups and downs. You know, even being a therapist, I share what I struggle with. I share the moments that I feel anxious. I share the moments that OCD creeps in, that I start to question myself and doubt myself and second guess myself because that's real, that's honest, that's authentic. And that needs to be seen so that we can balance out this highlight reel that we normally get on social media. And like I said earlier, us therapists are human, like plot twist, we are. We do have struggles, we do go through stuff, we go through our own struggles, our own difficult moments. And it's better to share that. In my opinion, personally, I think it's quite helpful to share that because otherwise you're not seeing the full picture. And if you're not seeing the full picture, you're comparing yourself to something that's not real. And that doesn't help anyone and encourages this feeling of being behind in life. I thought as part of this episode, it would be helpful to share some real life examples of people who have maybe achieved things later in life, people who society and the world would believe were behind based on like the societal timeline, for lack of a better word, but actually achieved really great things. So a really classic example of this, and you might know about this one, is Colonel Sanders, the KFC man. He actually started KFC in his 60s, and think how big that is. Like, that is a huge global success, and he started that in his 60s. Many people in their 60s would be thinking, okay, this is a time where we start thinking about retirement. So, this is a time where we start winding down. No, he actually created a whole ass company. Nobody would look at him now and think he was ever behind in life. That goes completely against societal timelines. Societal timelines dictate that we should be focusing on our career in our 20s, 30s, you know, growing businesses in our 20s and 30s. That's not the case for everyone. And that doesn't limit you achieving success. He is a great example of that. Global sensation is KFC. It's everywhere. I personally bloody love KFC. It's one of my favorite fast foods, to be truly honest. And I'm not a huge fast food fan, love KFC. I regularly say to my partner, okay, we need to go and get a KFC. And it's the only fast food place that I would probably actually make a conscious effort to go to because I love it. Imagine if he hadn't made that in his 60s. Imagine if he'd actually thought, okay, no, I don't want to do this now. This isn't going to fit into society. This isn't going to fit into the timeline. This isn't what's expected of me at this age. We'd never have KFC now. I think that'd be a huge disappointment. If he followed the standard timeline, that would be a huge disappointment. Another one, Morgan Freeman. He didn't get his big break until he was in his 50s. Think how big of an actor he is now. He is huge. If I see a film that's got Morgan Freeman in, it's pretty much an instant watch. Imagine if he'd got to his 20s, 30s, 40s and given up on acting. He never would have achieved the level of success that he's got now. If he'd have followed the timelines and the expectations, he probably would have given up, settled down, got a nice quiet life, white picket fence, 9 to 5 job, all of that sort of thing. And we wouldn't have any great films with him in like we do. These are only a couple of examples, but if any of these people had believed that they were falling behind or they had to stop because they couldn't achieve it, they were too far behind in life, it was too late for them, they'd missed their chance, they weren't fitting in with the expectations of others. If any of them had believed that, then they wouldn't have achieved what they achieved today. They wouldn't have created the things that we know and love today. Going back to what I said earlier, when I was sharing my own experiences of feeling behind at 18, when everyone had gone off to uni, I was devastated, right? I wanted to be a doctor. So to drop out of A levels and to not be going to uni with everybody else and to have the anxiety and depression that I was going through was awful. It was really awful. And this isn't one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I'm grateful I went through that because it got me to where I am now. I'm not going to bullshit you with something like that. It genuinely sucked. And I don't think I ever should have had to go through that. I don't. But I can recognize that if I'd gone to uni, if I'd followed that timeline that everybody else around me was doing at that time, it wouldn't have been the right thing for me. I would have gone and attempted to be a doctor and probably dropped out due to the stress and burnout. I wouldn't be sat here right now as a therapist, helping people with anxiety and OCD. I wouldn't be on this podcast. I wouldn't have created this podcast. I wouldn't have the life that I have now. I'd probably have a very different life. And that's not to say it would have been a bad life, but I do like my life. I like where I'm at right now. And if I'd gone to uni, I wouldn't have been able to achieve that. So I'm not grateful, thing like that. I'm not grateful for what it taught me, but I can recognize that what I was going through at that time, what was happening to me, even though I felt so far behind in life, it wasn't the right thing for me to follow that timeline. It wasn't the right thing for me to go to uni. And that nicely leads me on to my next point about the importance of shifting your perspective on this. Taking aside the mental health element of what I went through, completely taking that aside. For me, instead of thinking, I should have done this by now, I should have done that, I should be going to uni with everybody else, it would have been important to recognize that I'm exactly where I need to be, minus the anxiety and depression. Or just to recognize that life isn't a race, it's not a checklist, it's not a go to school, go to A levels, go to uni, get a good job, settle down with a family. It's not something to be ticked off, it's something to enjoy. It is a journey, without sounding cringy, it is a journey. It's not a race, it's not a destination to get to. This isn't a race, it is something to enjoy. Life is something to be present and enjoy. So if you're feeling this at the moment, try and see if you can reframe this a little bit in your head. Try to see if in those moments you can recognize that life isn't a checklist, life isn't a race, it's not something you have to rush through, and you are in the place that you need to be at the moment. You are doing what is right for you. With that, I think it's worth looking at some practical steps to ease the anxiety because this feeling does create a very real anxiety. We start to feel behind, we start to feel like we're not meeting expectations, we start to question where we are in life. And that is just going to ramp up any of that feeling of anxiety, especially because it does trigger a bit of an out of control feeling. Especially if you're feeling behind in relationships, but you're struggling to find a partner, that can really ramp up that anxiety, that out of control feeling. So, what practical steps can we take to ease this, to reduce it, to maybe reduce some of those triggers? This is really common advice, okay, but nobody ever takes it or actually listens to it. So, I'm going to repeat it. Limiting the amount of accounts that you follow. Social media, that comparison trap. See if you can mute, unfriend, delete some accounts that really trigger this feeling for you. If there's people that you went to school with and they're a constant source of your comparison, delete them, unfriend them. If that feels too much, if that feels too harsh, limit the amount of posts that you can see from them, mute them, restrict them. I can't remember what the other words are. Unfollow them, I think, is one of the things you can do on Facebook, and that's when you don't then see their posts. Basically, a lot of social media accounts have a way that you can restrict the posts that you see without having to unfollow someone. So if it feels like too much to unfollow them, simply restrict their posts. You might have heard that and thought, oh, Jess, I've literally heard this all the time. Just do it. Like, please, just give it a go. You will notice a big, big difference. It's one of them things that everybody says, everybody advises, but it does make a huge difference. Social media is a massive source of this comparison. So see if you can identify some of the accounts that really trigger this for you and get rid of them. This might not just be people you went to school with, this could be famous people. And on the flip side of this, what you can do is follow some accounts that are a bit more honest. Follow some accounts that share the honest struggles of mental health, if that's something that you're going through, if that's something that you're struggling with, that anxiety, that depression, you can follow some accounts that post about this honestly in a non-triggering way. Another thing to tap into and to watch for is if this feels too triggering for you to see those mental health posts. But there are accounts out there that post about these things in a really honest light, in a non-triggering way. So see if you can follow some more of those. Change your social media, change what you see day to day, first thing on the morning, so that that comparison maybe can't creep in as much. That comparison can't creep in, and that sense of feeling behind doesn't really have anything to sort of latch onto and feed off. Next one, reflect on what is going well. So often we focus on the shit parts of life. We focus on the parts that aren't going well. We focus on the parts of life that we're struggling with. See if you can actually think of and bring to light some things that are going well for you. So here's a question for you, and I want you to have a think about this right now. What are three things in life that are going well right now that you're happy with, that you're content with, that your past self really wanted? Really think about what you 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago dreamed and hoped of. What three things do you have in life right now that you know they wanted, that you know they hoped and dreamed was going to happen and they were going to get? It can be so small. These things can be tiny. They don't have to be huge. One for me, right, to share this, if I really think about this, me when I was 19, desperately, desperately wanted my own dog. I've had family dogs. We have like a family dog. And when I moved back home in my 20s, we had a family dog. I desperately, desperately wanted my own dog. And right now, she's here. Darcy, my absolute love of my life. If you do follow me on Instagram, she is like the majority of what I post about. So if you want to see more dogs, go follow me as well. You'll see more Darcy. But she's something that I really wanted, and she's such a small thing. She's not actually. She's not a small thing. She cost me an arm and a leg in vet bills and everything. But she's such like a thing that's sort of like slotted into my day, a little thing. It's not like a big career move or anything like that, but she's so important to me. And that was something that I wanted. So see if you can have a think about this. What did you 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago really want that you've got in your life right now? Next one. redefine what success means to you. More often than not, success is something that we've been taught about. And what I mean by this is we've been taught what success looks like. We've been told, okay, having this career, earning this amount of money, having this flash car, having this lifestyle is success. But in reality, success looks different for everyone. We're not all the same. We are all very different. If you think about people's like personalities, we're all very different. How can we all have the same idea of success? It's just not possible. So, see if you can redefine what success looks like for you. And this can take a little bit of thinking about because you might have a lot of beliefs in this that aren't actually yours. It's likely that you've got a lot of beliefs about what success is, about what it looks like, that are something you've internalized, something that you've seen, something that you've heard, something that you've learned, and it's not actually what you feel. So, see if you can redefine success, what it actually means to you. And the final one, start small. It's fair enough me telling you to redefine success and think about 3 things that past you would be proud of or would have wanted in life. But if there is something very real that you feel like you want, that you feel like you need, that you feel like is putting you behind, is there any really small steps that you can take towards that? Because we can do all the redefining, we can see things differently. But if there's something that you want, then there's something that you want. And that's the bottom line of it. But instead of seeing it as like this big, overwhelming thing that's so far away and puts you so behind everybody else in life, see if you can actually kind of break down the steps to getting there. See if you can see it almost like a staircase. Instead of the top step and seeing the whole staircase, what is on the first step? What is the first step you can take towards getting there? Really break this down, really small, really simple. It'll help take a bit of that pressure away and it'll help reduce that feeling of being behind because you're making progress. And if you're doing everything else as well, limiting the comparison triggers, redefining success, recognizing what you've got in life that past you would be happy with, would be proud of, be grateful for, then these steps don't feel as big. And this feeling of being behind doesn't have as much that it can latch onto. There isn't really anything there that it can kind of dig its claws in and make you feel crap about. This has become a really long episode, and we're actually not near the end because we've got questions. Forgot about the questions, but we are going to get to the questions because I feel like it's like a really nice element to add, and I'd love to hear what you actually think about the questions when we get there. But in the meantime, a gentle reminder, okay? I feel like you do maybe need this reminder. If you feel behind, please remember that life is not a race. It is a journey. It is something to enjoy. It is not something to achieve and to tick off and to get to that end goal. There's no way to win. You can't win at life. No one's keeping score other than you. Nobody is keeping score. And if anybody else is, if anybody else is putting those expectations, that pressure on you, that says a lot more about them than it does you. I'm in my 20s, right? So we get a lot of questions and conversations around kids and things like that. And that pressure from other people says more about them than it does about me. It does not mean that I need to have kids. It does not mean I need to even think about that. I don't have to even go down that. I don't have to answer their questions. The fact that they're asking says more about them than it does about where I am in life. So that's something to really remember. If you're getting that external pressure and somebody else is keeping score, that's not a reflection on you. And that doesn't dictate where you need to be. So there's no winning at life. No one's keeping score. If they are, that's a reflection on them, not you. And life is not a race. Please remember that. That's going to be really key when you feel like this. So before we wrap up, we have a couple of listener questions. And when I say a couple, I think I actually mean 4. I think there's more than a couple. I think I've got a couple and a few mixed up again. So yeah, we've got a few listener questions. So these are some things that I know so many of us will be struggling with. so many of us will be thinking about. And if one person's feeling like this, it's likely that more of you are. So let's have a answer of some of these questions. Let's talk about some of these places that people find themselves in, the situations that they're struggling with and feeling behind in. So let's dive in. Question one: how do I cope with having little to no friends? First of all, I want to say, I hear you. It's really lonely. I know what it feels like. It can be really, really isolating. We live in a world, right, that puts so much emphasis on having a big group of friends, a big circle of friends. I don't know if you've heard that TikTok audio that it's like, I think it's Rachel Green from Friends, and she's saying like, yeah, I've got my girls. And then people make edits of all like the friendship groups. I hope I'm not the only one that has seen those. People put a lot of focus on having a big circle of friends, a big friendship group. But the truth is, it's not the quantity of friends we have, but the quality of the connection that we have with them. That is what is important. If you don't have many friends right now, I want to really highlight the fact that that does not mean there's something wrong with you. Okay. Some seasons, sometimes in life, are just naturally more solitary than others. Sometimes we have more people, sometimes we have less. It's a natural kind of flow that comes with life. And it doesn't mean you'll always feel this way. It means that there could be other stages in life where you do have more friends. And that doesn't help the fact that at the moment you're trying to cope with feeling lonely by the sounds of it, having so few friends. I'm imagining that brings up feelings of loneliness. But knowing that in different stages of life can open up doors to new friends, different friends, new people can be a really hopeful thing to remember. If you are struggling with having few friends, little friends, or no friends, instead of focusing on what's missing, see if you can focus on finding that connection. Even if that's not with anybody else, that could be with yourself. Ask yourself the question: how can I nurture the relationships that I do have, even if it's only with me? Even if it's a relationship that I have with myself. Maybe that means checking in with an old friend. Maybe that means consciously arranging things with them. Maybe that means deepening a relationship with a family member, or even spending time with yourself, taking yourself on solo dates, things that you enjoy doing, because often we get this sense of we can't go and do the things that we enjoy, our hobbies, things like that, because we've got no one to do them with. But I wonder if there's a way that you could do that by yourself. I wonder if there's a way that you can kind of deepen that connection with yourself, nurture that relationship with yourself, and still get to enjoy doing these things. And the part of life that you're in at the moment, the part where you're struggling to have those connections, find those friends, that does not define you. You are not doing anything wrong. This season of life does not define your future. You are worthy of having friends, having those connections. You deserve that. You do deserve that. So, question two that somebody's asked is: all my friends are getting married and having kids, and I feel so far behind. How do I deal with this anxiety? It's so easy to look around and see what other people are getting, what other people are having, what their lives look like in comparison to yours. And it can leave you feeling like the odd one out. But something that I always try and remember with this is timing is so personal. And just because they're getting married, having kids right now, maybe at the same age as you, maybe at the same point in life, that doesn't mean that your timing is wrong. That doesn't mean that the fact that right now this isn't on the cards for you, this isn't happening, that doesn't mean that's wrong. That doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. That doesn't mean that you're not meeting expectations. Life doesn't run on like a single track. Marriage, kids, career goals, all of these things, they don't define success. Some people meet their partner when they're at school at age 14, others in their 20s, others in their 30s, some in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. You can meet the person that you're meant to be with at any point in life. And if that is in later life, that's okay. Some people have kids when they're young, some people have them in the middle of their life, some people have them with or without a partner. And some people create a life where they don't want kids, they don't have kids. And all of those things are okay. There's nothing wrong with any of those. So if this comparison is bringing that feeling of being behind, if it's making you feel like absolute rubbish and like not good about yourself, then see if you can mute these accounts. See if you can delete people. See if you can take a little bit of a break and a step back from this constant comparison and this constant flood of what everybody else is getting in life. And instead of focusing on what you don't have, you know, the marriage, the kids, try focusing on what you do have. Maybe you've got some strong friendships. Maybe you've got a really nice connection with your partner. Maybe you're talking to someone currently and you're really hopeful about where it could go. Maybe you've had some amazing experiences, or maybe you've got some plans for the rest of the year that you're so excited about. Try shifting your focus back to those things, the things that you do have, the things that you love, the things that you enjoy. Question 3. This person has asked, how do I be kind to myself when I feel like I've failed? I've moved out and then had to move home again. Oh, I relate to this. I literally spoke about this earlier in the episode, so hopefully you were listening to that. But I get it. Like this one hits really deep. We tie so much of our success, especially if you're in like your 20s and 30s, we tie so much of our success to moving out, independence, living alone, that kind of independent lifestyle. We see that as moving forward in life. And if you've moved out, you've had all of that, and then you have to come back home, I promise you, it's not a failure. It's it's just life. It's how life works sometimes, and that is okay. Life doesn't move in a straight line. I feel like I've repeated this a lot in this episode, but life doesn't move in a straight line. There is no one path. Sometimes we take detours, sometimes we pause, sometimes we have to go in what feels like a step back. And that is okay. But that doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you're human. Some things to remember with this: moving back home doesn't erase all of that experience that you've had. You've had that independent life by the sounds of it. You've got to enjoy that living alone. You know what that feels like. You probably know more now what you want that to look like in the future or what you don't want it to look like in the future. None of that disappears just because your situation has changed. You're not alone. I've literally been through this and it can be a really devastating experience. I get that. Like, I remember personally having that sense of feeling like I failed. But so many people have to move home at different parts in life. I know this was a really big thing in COVID as well, understandably. So, that a lot of people had to move back home because of finances, because they'd lost jobs, because of furlough. This is really common, and this was really common during that time. So whether it was for financial reasons, mental health reasons, unexpected life shifts, this is actually probably more common than you think. This is a chapter. It's not the whole book of your life. This is one segment of your life that you're going through at the moment. This is one small part, one small aspect of it. Right now, you're regrouping. It doesn't mean that you're not going to move forward again. It just means that you're taking a different path to maybe what you expected at this point. I wonder if it would maybe be helpful in this situation to see this instead of like a failure, or that, you know, you've had to take that step back, and instead see it as doing the thing that was best for you in the moment, even whether you had choice around this or whether this was something that just happened, whether it was life, whether it was finances, seeing this ultimately as a thing that is the best option for you right now. Shifting that perspective because you're adapting, you're taking care of yourself, you're figuring things out, and that is something to be proud of. Remember, you're not failing, you're learning. Okay, I miscalculated that. We're at the end of the Q&A. We actually had 3 questions, not 4. If you can't tell, I am absolutely crap at maths. So just, yeah, never ask me for numbers, percentages, any of that. But I hope this Q&A section brought you a little bit of comfort. I hope it brought you some answers, some things to think about, some things to reflect on if you ask these questions, or if you're in a similar place to the people who ask these questions. And if these questions resonated for you, I would love to hear in the comments or on Instagram. You can send me a DM if you found anything that I've said helpful, or if it's made you reflect or think about anything differently. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to message me or share a part of the episode that felt like it really connected with you. I would love to hear. Really would. So to wrap up this episode, because I think this has actually been quite a long episode. This might be the longest episode that we've had on the podcast, which is exciting. Um, but to wrap up this episode, I hope you all got a lot from this episode. I hope it's helped. I hope it's given you some things to think about, some things to reflect on, or even just a little bit more peace around the situations that you're in and the feeling of being behind that you've got at the moment. I know how hard it can be when it feels like everybody's got it figured out, but there's no right way to do life. There's no right way to do life, and there's no wrong way to do life. It's just life. It's just your journey and your path. So thank you for listening. If you want to keep up with new episodes, please like, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Do whatever it is that keeps these episodes or gets you notified of these episodes. Or what you can do is follow me on Instagram at Therapy with Jess Eden, or you can follow the podcast, Anxiously Capable Podcast, on Instagram, and you'll be told when new episodes come up because I'm constantly posting them on my stories for you all to listen to. So yeah, I'd love to connect with you over there. New episodes are out every Monday. So yeah, let me know what you'd like to hear. If there's anything in particular you'd want me to talk about, drop it in the comments below or send me a DM, and I will see you next Monday. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. And I can't wait to see you again. Bye.